When a judge mocked a teenager for daring to represent herself, no one expected what happened next, because this kid wasn't just any teen, she was a hidden legal genius about to change her entire community forever. The gavel's echo still trembled in the air when silence swept across the courtroom. Everyone's eyes fixed on the young woman standing at the defense table. Her hands were steady, but her heart pounded like a drum she refused to hear. She wore no robe of authority, no badge of reputation, just a gray suit that had seen better days and a calm defiance that seemed too old for someone her age. "State your name for the record," the judge said. "Amara Daniels, Your Honor," she replied, her voice even, every syllable crisp. The judge leaned back slightly, sizing her up. Judge Evelyn Hartman had presided over hundreds of cases, politicians, CEOs, desperate parents, you name it. But this girl didn't fit any mold she knew. Too young, too calm, too composed, and yet, something about the way she looked at the bench carried the gravity of someone who had lived 100 lives in half as many years. The gallery whispered, "Who is she? Where's her lawyer? Is she serious?" Amara heard every murmur but didn't flinch. She had expected the doubt, she'd grown up with it. Judge Hartman's tone was cool, professional. "Miss Daniels, I was informed the defendant refused counsel. Are you representing yourself?" "Yes, Your Honor," Amara said. A faint smile tugged at the corner of the judge's mouth, not of amusement but disbelief. "You do understand the seriousness of this case. This isn't a traffic citation. It's a civil dispute involving your entire homeowners association. I understand perfectly, Your Honor. And I also understand the law." The judge tilted her head, a glint of curiosity flickering behind her composure. "Very well, proceed." Amara opened her briefcase, a scuffed, second-hand thing, the clasp slightly loose. Inside were papers stacked with precision. She pulled out the first folder, the culmination of sleepless nights and whispered prayers, and laid it before her. "Your Honor, the case before you today isn't just about bylaws and signatures. It's about voices, ignored voices, belonging to families who've spent years paying into a system that forgot who it was meant to serve." Judge Hartman's expression shifted, just a fraction. The murmurs in the gallery quieted. Amara continued, "When my mother, Lena Daniels, was fined by the WA for painting her front door blue, a color approved 3 years earlier under a previous board, she asked for an appeal. She was denied. When she requested financial records to see where dues were going, she was ignored. And when she filed for transparency, she was told she didn't have the legal experience to question authority." Amara paused, letting the words settle. "But I do." A ripple of tension crossed the courtroom. Someone in the back coughed. A journalist's pen scratched furiously across paper. The judge's gaze hardened, but something thoughtful lingered beneath it. "Miss Daniels, are you implying the current WA board has acted unlawfully?" "I'm stating it as fact, Your Honor. And I'm here to prove it." Judge Hartman folded her hands. "You're what, 17, 18 as of last month," Amara corrected. "Old enough to vote, old enough to defend what's right." A soft chuckle escaped from one of the board members seated at the prosecution table. Amara didn't look at him. She didn't need to. She had grown up hearing that sound, the sound people made when they mistook youth for weakness. She took a deep breath and opened the next file. The judge watched in silence. For all her decades of experience, she couldn't shake the feeling that something remarkable was unfolding before her. It wasn't just the eloquence or the confidence, it was the way the young woman spoke with both precision and heart, as though the law itself was a language she'd been fluent in since birth. When Amara finished her opening statement, she didn't return to her seat. Instead, she looked directly at the judge. "Your Honor, may I call my first witness?" "Already?" Judge Hartman asked, half amused. "You're wasting no time, I see." "With respect, Your Honor," Amara said, "the truth doesn't like to wait." The courtroom door creaked open. An older woman entered, Amara's mother. Her hands trembled as she took the stand, clutching a small purse as though it were armor. Amara's tone softened. "Mom, could you tell the court what happened the day the WA notice arrived?" Her mother nodded, eyes glistening. "They said I had violated community standards. I'd painted the door blue, Amara's favorite color. I thought it matched the neighborhood beautifully. But the letter said I owed a fine of $500 and had to repaint it immediately." "Did you appeal?" "Yes." "They never answered. Then they raised our dues by 20% the following month. Said it was for maintenance improvements. But nothing changed, Amara. The same broken swings, the same potholes. Just more money disappearing." The courtroom listened. The story wasn't new, every WA resident had a similar tale. But the difference was who was telling it, and how. Amara took a step closer. Mom, when you asked for the financial records, what response did you get? They told me I wasn't entitled to them. That the board handled everything internally. Is that true, Your Honor? Amara turned, her voice sharp now. Are homeowners not entitled to see how their money is spent? Judge Hartman exhaled slowly. Under the WA Act, members are entitled to review all financial records upon written request. It's the law. Thank you, Amara said. No further questions. A ripple of unease spread through the board members' table. Their lead attorney, a man twice Amara's age, shifted in his chair. He hadn't expected to be challenged like this, especially not by someone barely out of high school. When it was his turn, he rose smoothly and approached the stand. Mrs. Daniels, he said, voice thick with condescension, isn't it true your daughter has been quite vocal in her opposition to the law for years? Her mother hesitated. She believes in fairness. Or perhaps she simply doesn't like authority. He pressed. Amara's jaw tightened. Objection. Argumentative. Judge Hartman's eyes flicked toward her. Sustained. The attorney smirked, retreating. No further questions. As the proceedings continued, Amara moved through evidence methodically, meeting minutes, budget inconsistencies, letters from frustrated residents. Each piece added weight to her case. By mid-afternoon, the once dismissive crowd leaned forward in fascination. The young woman who'd walked in as a curiosity now commanded the room like a seasoned litigator. Judge Hartman found herself taking notes, not just about the case, but about the girl. Her precision reminded her of her younger self, before cynicism had crept in through the cracks of long service. When the recess bell rang, the judge called a 10-minute break. Amara exhaled deeply and sat down. Her hands trembled now that the adrenaline faded. Hey, whispered a voice behind her. It was a neighbor, Mr. Lopez. You're doing great, kid. You're speaking for all of us. She smiled faintly. Thanks. I just want them to listen. The courtroom's air changed after the recess. It wasn't just the hum of conversation, it was the pulse of awakening. The residents who'd come out of curiosity now watched Amara like she was carrying their hopes on her shoulders. When Judge Hartman returned, the gavel struck once, echoing through the hall. Court is back in session, she said. Her tone was measured, but her eyes betrayed a glimmer of intrigue. Amara rose again. She didn't check her notes. She didn't need to. Every word lived inside her now. Your Honor, she began, I'd like to call Mr. Thomas Reed, the WA treasurer, to the stand. Reed stood slowly, his navy suit immaculate, his posture dripping with quiet arrogance. He gave Amara a look that said you don't belong here, and she met it with one that replied, we'll see about that. When he was sworn in, Amara approached with steady steps. Mr. Reed, she said calmly, you've served as treasurer for how many years? 5, he said, and during that time, have you been responsible for authorizing community expenses? I oversee them, yes. Excellent. Amara opened a folder. Can you confirm Exhibit D, this document, is a financial statement for the WA dated last year? Reed squinted. Looks like it. Good. Can you explain this line item? Community Improvement Fund, $62,000 withdrawal, what was that used for? Reed's eyes flickered. Maintenance. Amara tilted her head. That's vague. Maintenance for what? The park. Amara's tone sharpened slightly. The same park where the swing set still has yellow caution tape after 2 years. The courtroom stirred. A few residents exchanged knowing glances. Your Honor, Amara continued, I'd like to submit photographs taken last week showing no new improvements to the park in question. Judge Hartman nodded. Accepted. Amara handed the photos to the bailiff. Mr. Reed, can you tell the court what specific maintenance cost $62,000? Reed's mouth opened, then closed. I don't have the breakdown memorized. Of course not. But you're the treasurer. You approved it. He straightened defensively. I did what was required. Our contractors manage invoices. Interesting, Amara said, flipping another paper. Because the listed contractor, Bluestone Repairs LLC, doesn't exist in the state business registry. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Amara didn't flinch. Would you like to explain that, Mr. Reed? Must be an error, he stammered. An error that cost homeowners $62,000. Judge Hartman leaned forward. Mr. Reed, do you have records to support this expense? Reed swallowed. Not with me. Then you'll be required to produce them before this court within 24 hours, the judge said sternly. Amara nodded respectfully, but inside, her pulse raced. That was the first crack in the wall. When she returned to her seat, her mother reached for her hand. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. Amara squeezed back. "We're not done yet." By late afternoon, fatigue set in. But the young lawyer's fire hadn't dimmed. Her voice carried through the chamber like a current, weaving together law and heart. "Your Honor," she said during closing remarks for the day, "this isn't about punishing anyone, it's about restoring trust. The people in this room pay into a system that claims to protect them, yet hides the truth behind bureaucracy and intimidation. If an 18-year-old can uncover what's wrong in a week of research, imagine what could change if the board were transparent." She paused. The courtroom was silent. Judge Hartman studied her closely. "Miss Daniels, your passion is commendable. But passion must meet procedure. Do you have conclusive proof of misappropriation?" Amara looked at her, steady as stone. "Not yet, Your Honor. But I will." The judge nodded slowly. "Court is adjourned until tomorrow. Miss Daniels, I'll expect that proof." Amara gathered her papers, her hands trembling, not from fear, but exhaustion. Outside the courthouse, evening settled over the city. Reporters waited like hawks. "Miss Daniels, how does it feel to take on the law by yourself? Do you really think you can win?" She smiled faintly. "Winning isn't the point. Doing what's right is." The cameras flashed, capturing her calm resolve. That night, in the small apartment she shared with her mother, Amara spread the documents across their kitchen table. She had been preparing for this moment for years, ever since her father's name was erased from the Hoa's ledger after he'd questioned a vote. He had been a community advocate, a dreamer, the kind of man who believed rules should serve people, not control them. When he passed away suddenly, Amara promised herself she'd finish what he started. Now, with only hours before court resumed, she studied every receipt, every line of ink. Somewhere in this mess was the truth. Her mother came up quietly behind her. "You should rest, sweetheart." "I can't," Amara whispered. "Not until I find it." Her mother sighed. "You're just like your father." Amara smiled faintly. "That's the best thing you could have said." Hours ticked by. At 2 in the morning, she found it, a series of digital transfers that led to a private account under Reed's name. The money trail wasn't long, but it was enough. She cross-referenced dates, signatures, and vendor IDs. Everything matched. Her eyes burned, but her heart lifted. She whispered to the empty room, "Got you." The next morning, the courtroom buzzed before proceedings even began. Word had spread that the young woman had uncovered something big. Judge Hartman entered with her usual composure, but there was curiosity behind her calm. "Miss Daniels," she said, "do you have new evidence to present?" "Yes, Your Honor." Amara approached the bench with measured confidence, a USB drive in hand. Contained here are transaction records showing that the HOA's improvement funds were redirected to an account linked to Mr. Reed personally. "I've also printed summaries for the court and the defense." Gasps broke the silence again. Reed's face turned pale. "That's absurd." Amara turned to him. "Then you'll have no problem explaining why your signature appears on every transfer authorization." Judge Hartman raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Reed," he stuttered. It must have been a clerical error." Amara didn't gloat. She simply said, "The truth doesn't make mistakes." The judge reviewed the documents carefully. When she finally looked up, her expression had changed. There was something new, respect. "Miss Daniels," she said slowly, "this is impressive work. Where did you learn to conduct such an audit?" Amara hesitated. "My father was an accountant. He taught me how to follow numbers, and people." Judge Hartman nodded thoughtfully. "I see. Then, after a pause, you've done in 2 days what many trained investigators would take weeks to uncover. I'll order a full review of these finances and a temporary suspension of the HOA board pending verification." The room erupted in murmurs of disbelief and applause. Amara stood still, letting the sound wash over her. For the first time, she saw tears in her mother's eyes, tears not of frustration but pride. Judge Hartman struck the gavel to quiet the crowd. "Order. Court will reconvene tomorrow for final statements." Then, in a rare soft tone, she looked directly at Amara. "Miss Daniels, good work." Those 2 words were everything. That night, as she walked out under the courthouse lights, Amara felt something shift. She wasn't just fighting her mother's case anymore, she was fighting for every voice that had been silenced, every neighbor who'd been dismissed. And somewhere deep inside, she knew this wasn't the end of her journey. It was the beginning of a legacy. Morning light poured through the courthouse windows like a quiet blessing. The gallery was already full long before the session began. Reporters had claimed the first 2 rows, residents filled the rest, clutching notebooks and folded petitions. What had begun as a small hearing about a blue door had become the heartbeat of an entire neighborhood. Amara entered carrying the same scuffed briefcase, but this time she walked with the calm of someone who finally knew she belonged. Her mother followed a few steps behind, eyes shining with quiet pride. When Judge Hartman took the bench, the hush that fell over the courtroom felt almost sacred. She glanced at Amara before speaking. This court has reviewed the financial documents submitted yesterday. The evidence is clear and compelling. Before we proceed to final judgment, Miss Daniels, do you have anything you'd like to say? Amara rose slowly, her voice carried through the chamber, steady yet warm. Your Honor, 5 years ago my father stood at an HOA meeting asking one question, where does the money go? That question cost him friends, opportunities, and eventually his peace. Today I stand here, not to accuse, but to answer him. A ripple of emotion passed through the audience. Every homeowner deserves transparency. Every rule should serve fairness, not fear. I didn't come here to tear down a system, I came to remind it of its purpose. She turned toward the residents. This victory isn't mine, it's yours. You deserve better, and from this moment forward, you'll have it. Even Judge Hartman seemed to hesitate before speaking, as though reluctant to break the spell. Thank you, Miss Daniels. Please be seated. The judge's tone shifted, firmer now. This court finds that members of the Cedar Grove WA Board, including Treasurer Thomas Reed, engaged in financial misconduct and violated the WA Act. Effective immediately, the current board is dissolved pending re-election. The court further orders restitution of misappropriated funds and the creation of an independent audit committee. Gasps, then cheers. Reed slumped in his chair, face drained of color. Judge Hartman raised a hand for silence. Let this serve as reminder. Authority exists to protect, not exploit. And sometimes, justice needs a new voice to speak for it. Then, rare for any courtroom, she smiled. Miss Daniels, you've proven that age and titles mean nothing without integrity. Congratulations. Applause erupted. Cameras flashed like bursts of light in a storm. Outside, the courthouse steps overflowed with neighbors and reporters. Someone thrust a microphone toward Amara. Amara, how does it feel to win? She took a breath. It's not about winning, it's about being heard. My father used to say truth doesn't shout, it simply stands and waits for someone brave enough to speak it. The crowd quieted, hanging on every word. She smiled, tired but luminous. And to everyone watching, don't wait for permission to stand up for what's right. You're strong enough already. As the crowd dispersed, Judge Hartman approached quietly. Without her robe, she looked more human, older, gentler. You remind me of myself, a long time ago, she said. Promise me something, Amara. Keep using that voice. I will, Amara said softly. The judge nodded. Good, because this world needs it. Then she turned and walked away, leaving Amara in the golden light of her own beginning. That evening, the neighborhood held an impromptu gathering at the park. String lights were hung between trees, children played where the broken swings once stood, and laughter rolled through the air for the first time in years. Amara stood near the food table, surrounded by neighbors offering hugs, cookies, and thank yous. Mr. Lopez clapped her on the shoulder. Never thought I'd see the day our community smiled again. You gave us back our home, Mrs. Turner added, eyes bright with tears. Amara shook her head. We did it together. That's the point. Her mother joined her, carrying 2 paper cups of lemonade. To your father, she said softly, raising her cup. Amara lifted hers. To Dad, and to what he believed in. They drank, and for a moment the night felt infinite. Later, sitting alone on the park bench, Amara opened her briefcase one last time. Inside lay her father's old notebook, edges worn, pages crowded with careful handwriting, meeting notes, calculations, dreams for a better WA. On the final page he had written, justice begins in small rooms where someone still cares. She traced the words with her fingertip and whispered, I kept my promise, Dad. A cool breeze rustled the pages as if answering her. As she walked home beneath the streetlights, the future felt wide open. She thought of studying law formally, of helping more communities reclaim their voices. Maybe this courtroom victory was only the first chapter of something much bigger. And somewhere in the distance, she imagined her father smiling. The victory banners came down after a week, but Amara quickly learned that winning a verdict and rebuilding a community were 2 very different battles. The newly appointed interim board met inside the old clubhouse, a small building that smelled of fresh paint and new beginnings. Folding chairs circled a table covered in papers, coffee cups, and a fragile kind of optimism. Judge Hartman, now serving as an advisor, sat quietly in the back, her presence both grounding and humbling. "All right," said Mr. Lopez, "we've got a clean slate. But we need a leader." All eyes turned to Amara. She hesitated. "I never wanted a title." Her mother smiled from the corner. "Maybe titles aren't bad if you give them meaning." The room waited. Finally, Amara exhaled. "Then let's not build another board, we'll build a community council. Every family gets a say. We'll publish every dollar, every plan. No more locked doors." A murmur of approval swept through the group. The judge gave a small, satisfied nod. That night, Amara stayed behind to clean up the papers. Outside, streetlights shimmered across the wet pavement from an earlier rain. She caught her reflection in the glass door, tired eyes, hopeful smile, and for the first time truly saw the woman she was becoming. Her phone buzzed. A message from a news outlet blinked on the screen. Local teen attorney inspires state reform discussions. Interview request tomorrow. She set it down, staring at the words. The idea of cameras and microphones no longer frightened her, but she felt the weight of what came with them. Winning had made her visible. Now, she would have to live up to that visibility. She whispered to herself, "Stay humble, stay honest, stay kind." It was the same mantra her father used before every WA meeting. The next day, the interview aired live from the park, the same place where everything had begun. Children played behind her, the repaired swing set gleaming in the sun. Reporters asked about her plans. "I'm not a hero," she said softly. "I'm a neighbor who cared enough to read the rules. And if I can do that, anyone can. Justice doesn't belong in fancy buildings, it starts at kitchen tables and community parks." The interviewer smiled. "What's next for you?" Amara looked at the playground and then back to the camera. "Law school, maybe, but mostly, more listening. I want every person here to feel safe enough to speak." The video spread across social media that evening. Messages flooded in from other neighborhoods asking how to organize their own councils. Her story had become a quiet movement, proof that small voices could echo loudly when spoken with honesty. Weeks passed. The council's first project was rebuilding the community garden. Families worked side by side, repainting fences and planting herbs. Even Mr. Reed, once the disgraced treasurer, showed up one morning holding a tray of seedlings. He looked awkward but sincere. "I owe everyone an apology," he said, voice shaking. "If you'll let me, I'd like to help fix what I broke." Amara studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Redemption grows where humility takes root. "Grab a shovel." The neighbors applauded, not because they forgot, but because forgiveness felt like sunlight after years of shade. One evening, as the garden bloomed and laughter drifted through the air, Judge Hartman visited again. She stood beside Amara, hands folded behind her back. "You've done something rare," she said. "Most people win and walk away. You stayed." Amara smiled. "It didn't feel finished." The judge chuckled. "It never is. Justice is a living thing, it needs tending, just like your garden." They watched the families planting late into dusk. Fireflies began to flicker between the rows of tomato vines. "Do you think my father would be proud?" Amara asked quietly. Hartman turned to her. "He'd be proud that you didn't just fight. You healed." Later, back home, Amara opened her father's notebook again. She added a new line beneath his final entry. "Justice begins in small rooms, and grows wherever courage is shared." She closed the book gently and placed it on the shelf. Outside her window, the park lights glowed like stars. Her mother called from the kitchen, "Dinner's ready." Amara smiled. "Coming." For the first time in years, the house felt light. No more unopened mail from the WA, no more late-night worry. Just peace, steady and quiet. A few months later, she received her acceptance letter to the State University's pre-law program. The envelope trembled in her hands. She looked out toward the park, where neighbors were now hosting open-air movie nights. Her community was alive again. She whispered to herself, one promise kept. Many more to go. The day she left for college, the entire neighborhood came to see her off. Children waved handmade banners. Mrs. Turner pressed a small package into her hands. Inside was a key, old and brass. "It's the master key to the clubhouse, Mrs. Turner said. "We voted to keep it for you. Just in case you ever come back." Amara hugged her tightly. "Thank you. I will." As she climbed into the bus, her mother called out, "Go make the world fair, one street at a time." Amara laughed through happy tears. "That's the plan." The bus pulled away, and through the window she watched the community she had mended shrink into the horizon, lights twinkling like promises. That night, Somewhere between the city and the unknown future, Amara opened her notebook. On a blank page she wrote, "The young lawyer's promise, never let silence be stronger than truth." She smiled and closed it. Tomorrow would bring new cases, new voices, and new rooms waiting for someone who cared. But for tonight, she let herself rest, because justice, too, needed quiet moments to breathe. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heartfelt tales about courage, hope, and the power of everyday heroes.